Like our content? It's funded by viewers like you. Please consider becoming a sustaining supporter of New Church Live today.
Good morning, friends. Pastor Chuck Blair, great to have you joining me here today. And today's service is one that's going to be able to hit a lot of different notes. I think for people who are coming to our church service, either as part of our studio audience or online, it's one where if you're coming and you're heavily burdened, like it's just a rough time. There's going to be a lot in here I think it's going to be helpful. As well as if you're coming and life's just been great, there's also going to be some pieces there about how to take it to the next step. As we look at this basic movement from nervous to centered, from anxious to at peace. It was interesting yesterday reading on Facebook, one of our dear friends, somebody who's very involved with our church said, all I want is peace. And I get that. That deep core level of shalom, that basic core feeling of like, it's good, God has this. And sometimes we see that through tears, sometimes we see that through laughter, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. What are the mechanics of it? How can we maybe find a new way to look at that can give us a different perspective? I think all of us would agree, we live in times that are nervous. I mean, these are anxious times. And again, being a former history teacher, I feel like America has all these, as with any country, right? It has these little nervous blocks and little moments of peace, contentment, whatever you want to call it in between. But that's something all people have wrestled with for all times. How do we deal with the anxiety when it feels like there's not just personal anxiety, but community anxiety as a wider whole? I look at these words, and I heard somebody preach on these. This is from T.S. Eliot. This would have been written decades ago, and this is a paraphrase. The characters no longer have great ideals. They neither inspire or conflict. Now all they have are nervous reactions. And I find that pretty powerful. That I think it's not just, we don't just look out there, but we look in here. I mean, how much of our lives are really driven day in and day out by real core commitments? Well, a lot of the time they are, but a lot of the time they're just driven by nervousness. I mean, even this morning, driving up to church, I'm in the lane. I'm going slightly more than 55 miles per hour. And a police car comes screaming up behind me, lights and sirens on, and instantly, like, we'd gone on a beautiful little couple-day family vacation. Instantly, all those beautiful memories gone. As the nerves take over, and I'm already going through my conversation with the police officer, I'm starting to pull over into the right lane, and he goes zooming past. That's the way life is. And we think about life, in terms of the commitments that we have, and in terms of life, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for this. If we act from a commitment to ideals, we will, ... If we act out of a nervous reaction, we will, ... I think, folks, when we look at, again, this concept of peace, the Jewish word, which I love, shalom, wholeness, when we really look at it from that angle, of course that's the place where life grows out of commitments. Because it's something beyond the normal storms of the day. But I know when I work out of a nervous reaction, I want things solved immediately. I imagine many of us catastrophize, where we take something that is really hard and we take it to the worst possible outcome. Sometimes it is that. I should say that. That's important to know. Like sometimes it really does get that bad, and a lot of the time it doesn't. But regardless, how do we come from those centered places of commitment in our lives? So with that, friends, I want to welcome you to New Church Live. It is so good to have you here. I know, again, that most folks watch us online from all over the place. It's wonderful to have you here. For those of us who join us in our studio audience here in Bernathen, Pennsylvania, it's wonderful to have you here as well. Thank you for joining us as we get into this conversation about how is it that we move from that nervous, anxious state into a place far more known for its confidence, for its peace, for its shalom, for its centeredness. So friends, a big welcome. Welcome to New Church Live.
Why are you still crying? Your pain is now through. Please forget those teardrops. Let me take them from you. The love you are blessed with, this world's waiting for. So let out your heart, please, please, from behind that locked door. It's time we start smiling. What else should we do? With only this short time, I'm gonna be here with you. And the tales you have taught me, from the things that you saw, makes me want out your heart, please, please, from behind that locked door. And if ever my love goes, if I'm rich or I'm poor, please let out my heart, please, please, from behind that locked door. From behind that locked door. Thank you.
So today I want to start out with this statement, and I think we all can relate to it, that life will humble us. Like life will humble us. Probably some of us are living very much in that today. Like life will humble us. I imagine for many of us, we've had, on a lighter note, we've had a professional experience that's been very humbling. And as well, sometimes even humorously so. I remember on this stage years ago, I was quoting something and it was about mountain climbing and how that's like spiritual life. And it was climb high, rest low, climb high, rest low. That's how you get acclimated. What I didn't know is I was pulling my shirt up to expose my belly button every time. And so there's humorous parts where we get humbled, but there's also very serious ones as well. Where have you been humbled? Where have you been humbled, maybe in your professional life? But certainly, where have you been humbled in your personal life? Where have you had plans and thoughts and ideals, many of which, not all of which, but many of which are good, and it just didn't work? For some reason, it didn't fall the way that we would have loved for it to have fallen. And again, I want to say, a lot of the time, those desires, they're good desires, friends. They're good desires most of the time. And I think we all share that experience of being humbled. That's one of the beautiful parts of when you look at the Bible is the Bible, friends, it's never like a recipe of perfect people who did perfect things. It's a recipe where it shows again and again this very human experience of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, mixed motivations, huge mistakes, great grace, resurrection. Like it has all these different themes to it. But the themes are rich. It's not dealing about perfect. I say it a lot because I believe it to my core. Like there's such a difference between perfect love and unconditional love. That idea that the love we get to learn in this world is unconditional. We don't get it perfectly, but we do get to understand it unconditionally. This story in Philippians has a lot of that in it. So what we do every summer, friends, because it's summertime, people are for the Philadelphia area, they're down at the shore, wherever you might be watching us. I know we have people watch us from all over, no doubt some from vacation. And so what we do is we do a little mini Bible study. And this summer, what we're doing is we pick the book of Philippians, which has 4 chapters. That's why it's a 4-week series. We did chapter 1 last week. We're doing chapter 2 this week. You can read it probably you can read the whole book in probably an hour if you want to do that. And it's this beautiful letter. And it's a letter that's written by this disciple by the name of Paul, who was one of the main evangelists of the Christian faith right when it got started. And it's written from this place of someone who has been deeply humbled. Deeply humbled. For those of you unaware, like Paul's calling comes his famous road to Damascus conversion, where in all his pomp and circumstance, he was actually a very well-renowned Israeli cleric, Jewish cleric. And as a Jewish cleric, he's going out there, he's actually persecuting the Christians. Literally, God blinds him and then converts him, and he converts to being a Christian, ends up being one of the people who really helped the Christian movement get its feet. But literally, he was knocked off his horse. And not just knocked off a horse, but ends up incarcerated. So he writes this letter from jail to the Philippians, to this church, the Philippians. He writes this letter, and friends, don't lose sight, he's writing from jail. And yet when you read the letter, it doesn't appear that way at all. It's not, the letter does not read like a Johnny Cash song. The letter reads something far different. Of somebody who's found themselves by losing themselves and sees the future through service. Found themselves by losing themselves and sees the future through the lens of service. Now, is it what Paul writes, is it perfect theologically? No, and you'll see stuff that he says that's a little bit off, and we're welcome to take that and take what we like, get rid of the rest. But he writes a lot from this humble place, and it's worthwhile for us to look at that for a minute and go under it to really start to understand what humility can build in our lives and what God is constantly doing with us in terms of those times where life actually is incredibly difficult. And it's not a journey, again, that Jesus didn't make, that the Lord didn't make. Paul says this about the Lord: he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Now it's a beautiful, this is kind of theology, a theological riff here for a quick second. Bible starts, mankind made in God's image and likeness. And here is Paul saying, yep, and remember it works both ways, that Jesus the Lord is made in our image, in a very human image, a human likeness. And what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean 5'10", 165 pounds per se. That might have been Jesus' dimensions. I don't know. But that's not what was important. Important part here is the Lord came into the earth, again, in this, look at the line here, made in human likeness, the nature of a servant. Coming as an infant, going through all the trials and tribulations of life, and neither enters life, and the second part's very important, nor leaves this life as a conquering hero. Neither enters nor leaves, but enters and leaves as a servant. There's great wisdom in that, folks, and we can see it, for those of you who are aware of the Easter story, we can see that in Jesus and his famous foot washing, etc. And again, the humility there, and just don't lose track, friends. This is just important. Don't lose track the fact that this bit of we all get humbled, hold that as part of today's service, because when we look at things again and we talk about Jesus' foot washing or the Philippians, it's so easy to lose track of this really critical fact over here, that we are all humbled, and so was Jesus. That's part of life's journey. It's not a pleasant part. I don't know anyone who signs up for that part. But I do know this. I know that there's great gifts in the long run when we come to that sober, tender place that humility creates. And that's very different from humiliation. I want to say that's an important aside. Very different from humiliation, but there's a humbling there. And with that humbling, friends, comes just a lot of, strangely, down the road comes a lot of joy. Now you'll see some of that. This is from Philippians 2, verses 1 through 4. Therefore, if any of you have encouragement from being united to Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, making the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Again, it's kind of interesting, right? Because you look at this line, and I look at like the key words in this, and there aren't words you think somebody would write from prison, words of encouragement, comfort, love, sharing, tenderness, compassion, joy, wholeness, love again, unity. Those aren't words that we would associate with incarceration per se, but they are words that are used here. And what we see here, friends, and this is something, this is both what God is doing and what we need to do. And I want to just touch on that for a second. So we're going to move into a place here talking about what God was doing in this situation and what we need to do. It's here God does it at a level that we can't imagine at all, because it's so much bigger and more loving than we could ever possibly envision. But we are asked in our own small way, using Rudyard Kipling's phrase here, with worn and broken tools, to pick those tools up and to just do the best we can. And what I want to talk about that is part of this is this idea of being propped up versus being lifted up. I think a lot of the time when we hit a place where we've been humbled, we end up being propped up. We end up being propped up. We end up just not lifted up, but just propped up where we have like rafters that are sort of like, put in there to keep the porch from falling, to keep the house from falling over, to make sure all those things don't like disastrously come apart. Now, friends, propping up, I want to be clear, like some of the time, that's a good thing. To just simply prop someone up. Now again, the approach is it's sort of emergency, it's 911. We're just trying to solve a problem temporarily. We're doing the best we can. There's some sort of extrinsic thing to it, like the prop there on the right, the rafter on the right. There's some sort of external thing there that we just put into place. This is a great short-term solution, but it's not long-term. And remember when I said, like, what are the reactions that are born of nervousness? I know when I'm nervous, I just want propped up for a second. I think probably a lot of us are that way. We just want sort of some temporary solution that we believe, mistakenly, I think a lot of the time, that we think will be a long-term solution. I remember for years being a teacher, and there was always that student that frankly you would wish was absent from class that particular day. And it was just this momentary, like quiet in the classroom, and it just felt so good, but it wasn't a long-term solution. It was a propped up of sorts to make the class work a little better, but it wasn't a long-term solution. See, the long-term solution, so much of life with the long term and what God's really trying to do is much more of this idea of being lifted up. Much more this idea of being lifted up. Here are just some things about being lifted up. When we lift up, and this is what God is doing and what we are to do. God does it at this level. We grab a few little tools and try to do it at this level. And an aside to this, friends, if you're somebody who needs lifted up, just remember, this is an aside, one of the best ways to feel lifted up is to extend that gift to other people. Now, what is that gift? Lifted up. What we do is we build on intrinsic strengths. So when we're lifting up someone we love, we're seeing what their strengths are and we're bringing those to the fore. We're looking at a long-term solution. So it's not just solving it for today to make sure the building doesn't collapse. It's as Martin Luther King said, it's going upstream, trying to figure out what are the problems upstream so that downstream looks different. And the growth part, and this is really important, folks. The growth part, it deals with intrinsic motivation. So when you're lifting somebody up, you're looking at what those strengths are, just as God looks at what our strengths are. You're asking them to start to move, and you're looking at their intrinsic motivation to do so. That's how we start to pull other people up. What happens here, friends, is so life humbles us, and then God kind of lifts us up here. And then what happens at the back end? So we have this lifting that takes place, this beautiful, incredible lifting that takes place. And what is it that happens here? What we develop is this. It's a beautiful concept. What we get is a sense of self that's granted as a gift, a sense of self that's granted as a gift. And once we get that sense of self, it's such a different feel to life. The sense of self, friends, I think of the word bright sadness. That's what was coming to me, as I was getting ready for this morning again. It's where we've been humbled, but now we have a sense of self, and it's a sense of self that's no longer caught way up here. It's a sense of self that's so deep and rich, and not, I don't want to sound melodramatic in this, but it does tend to have a little tinge of maybe even a little tinge of sadness to it. That's not all bad. It's not just sort of a joyous, happy clappy up here. It's got the whole story in it. I think, friends, the times, right, where we go through a national cataclysm, those things happen. If you look at 9/11, you look at 9/11, the famous, which we've actually did a video on this years ago, the 9/11 boat lift, which took people off of Manhattan Island after 9/11. Here all these boats just instantly got together, somehow spontaneously figured it out, evacuated more people than were evacuated at Dunkirk. Go figure that. But you think about what were the conversations, on those boats? What were the conversations with the captain, with the crew? I think that's what that new sense of self is. And this is so tricky. And I'm going to apologize in advance because this will come off as wrong for some people. It's not self-esteem. It's actually something far greater. It's your true self. It's who you actually are. It's the angel part that God has been gently cultivating since you were a baby. I would argue even before that. Comes down from heaven. It's that little part that God just continues to cultivate and grow. And that humbling, that humility, that is part of it. And once we get to that place, folks, it is a deeply powerful place. And it's a place, again, it's got lots of joy, lots of good stuff to it. But it clearly shows a shift. And we see that shift in the second part of the Philippians quote. What happens? How do we relate to other people? And how will we then relate to others? Well, here's the answer. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. Where we really start that outward facing. self-esteem can be a very attractive force, and it's folks, like, I should back up here, like, the tricky part is, again, not having self-esteem is not the answer. Like thinking you're nothing, like that's not the answer. It's just this orientation where the orientation flips outward as best we can. And again, it's going to be as best we can. We're not going to do that perfectly. But what we start to understand there, folks, we start to see things in a very different way, and we start to see like the common good differently. Now, coming back to that again, we come back again to this place, this very humble space. And from a Swedenborgian, from a Christian New Church perspective, and this is kind of interesting. There's a bit of a paradox here. It's where we really allow others to have the freedom that they need to move the world forward in the ways that they see it. There, where freedom, our ability to allow others freedom, to allow ourselves freedom, is what really allows other people to serve. Because that freedom, folks, freedom according to reason, in other words, it's where we find ourselves free to exercise those loves as best we can, using the wisdom as God gives us to see it, to serve the common good. That's so much part of lifting up. Because lifting up means this. Lifting up means I need to be close enough to you to see the good in you. And the good is the default. Like the good is there. So I have to draw close enough. We have to draw close enough to each other where we can really see it. And allow the freedom for people to express that, including our own. That's so important, like including our own. It's not just a gift that we give out there, but it's a gift that we have in here. And when we allow that to take place, friends, that real freedom and that freedom in service, that's where we'll start to see that lifting up that he's talking about. And it's a humble place because it's not like we have the gifts, but instead of the gifts coming home to us, the gifts get given out and become homes to others. It's a very different way of seeing it and a very much more empowered way of going about it. And what we see when we do that, folks, a lot of the time is this beautiful shift. The shift from being anxious and worried to the shift to being committed and centered. And we'll find a shalom there. Now, that doesn't necessarily answer the problem at hand. You know, in other words, somebody who's struggling because a relationship that they cherish is dissolving, it doesn't solve that. That is sad, that is hard, that is difficult. What we're talking about is a way to maybe see a way forward over the horizon, a way to see a way forward that can move us into a new place with a new set of, maybe not even, shame to use the word new, maybe a revisited set of commitments that will help us to do better on life as we move forward with it. So, when we come back, friends, what I'm going to do is a lot of this is kind of like up here, and it's good stuff to talk about, but it's up here. But after this song and then a brief couple of announcements, what we're going to do is my dear friend, Reverend Mark Perry from San Diego, California, happened to be in town, and I knew he was going to be in town, so I said, Mark, why don't you join me on stage? So he's going to join me on stage, and we're going to talk about how do you take these big ideals that we've talked about and then really move them down to life so you can hear somebody's story and hear about how that might look moving forward as, again, we rediscover shalom.
I've never been good at change. If I'm honest, it always scared me. But I can't deny this stirring deep inside me. Now I know it's time to stop resisting. 'Cause I'm not getting any younger. is such a sad way to live a life. Face to the wind, I'm jumping out, I'm walking in every single thing you want to show me. To the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the taking in, the letting go, to the tears and laughter, to the great unknown, to the open journey, into faith I go. Nobody said this would be easy. Anyone who ever did never went through anything painful. Faith is not some fragile thing that shatters when we walk through something hard, so we walk on, whatever may come. To the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the taking in, the letting go, to the tears and laughter, to the great unknown, to the open journey, into faith I go, running through the field like a little child. Stepping off the edge, I'm facing all my fears. If this is what it feels like to believe again, I'll believe again. So when I feel like giving up, when I feel like throwing it all away, I look back over my shoulder and I can see your goodness in every single step that I have taken. And it beats like a drum, and it rings like a bell, and it sings like a choir, leading me on my way, lead me on my way. To the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the taking in, the letting go, tears and laughter, the great unknown, to the open journey, into faith I go. Into faith I go. Into faith I go.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to New Church Live. It's easy when we're watching from home and sitting on our sofas to forget to donate. No buckets being passed when you're on your sofa. I know myself, I've been guilty of this. Please remember, your contributions are what make today possible and all the other services and programs that are provided by New Church Live. And it's easy. Simply text the word New Church Live, all one word, to 77977. Thanks so much, and we appreciate your support.
And folks, a quick second announcement. Again, at New Church Live, we're always trying to figure out again to serve as best as we can. And with the changing times, like we've been going through this era almost, it's going to be, going to be a big shift. It is a big shift. It has been a big shift. We want to continue to find ways to serve you, our dear parishioners, better and better as we seek to find ways to serve better and better as a congregation as a whole. What we're doing is we're asking if you have any interest in filling out a survey to give your perspective on that. You can do that. You can see feedback here, and you can either go onto our website and fill it out, or if you would like me to send you the link, you can text me and I will send it to you. You can text me at 215-740-3662. So, thank you for that. And now back to the service itself. It's interesting, folks, starting out with it, we all are humbled, will be humbled. That's just the way life seems to go. And so much of it, as I'm sitting backstage, like so much of it, because I'm sure that there's people out there today who are right in the middle of that. And the prayer is that you're surrounded by people who can see the good in you, can see those best parts. And yeah, of course, there's the temporary propping up, which is beautiful. And also, hopefully, you can put yourself in a situation where you're lifted up. We're around those people who really see that good, really see that angel within, really see you for who you are, and then lift up. I know yesterday had a beautiful wedding for a New Church Live couple this past weekend, and so much of it was just like talking about the gift of just really being places where we're seen. And it's not just, I wish I had a place to be seen, but it's also, it's descriptive, but it's also prescriptive of where are you able to do that for other people? Again, with a lot of humility, where are you able to really see them for who they are in their lives? And to understand the lessons of all that, like what comes out of the back end of this. A spiritual context to this, I think, is really important. We've talked a lot this summer about the idea of not just what's your story, but what story are you in? And the beautiful part of putting within a Christian New Church framework is what story you're in. It's an eternal story, never the bottom of the night. And it's a story where God holds it at the edges. I don't think God's pushing us around like little chess pieces on a board. God holds it at the edges and holds it underneath, supports us. And that story, friends, that story is such a good story. And we need to be able to hear again and again from people who have life experiences where they found themselves humbled over things, but then they found gifts out the other side of that. And it doesn't mean, again, that life is necessarily always better, the graph's always going up and to the right. That's always a dangerous way to think. That gets into prosperity gospel stuff, won't go there. But it is this idea that just life it's just good. Friends, it's just good. You're good. So with that, I'd like to introduce to the stage my dear friend, Reverend Mark Perry of San Diego, California. Mark, you want to come on out? Great to have you here, Mark.
Chuck.
Good to see you. Mark, by the way, has the world's coolest South African accent. So you want to say hello to the folks joining us?
Yeah, good day, everyone. Glad to be here. Welcome to everyone online. Hope and pray you hear something today that inspires you to become the better version of your internal self.
There you go, the true self. And Mark, we talked, we've known each other for years, and life's had its ups and downs for both of us over that time. And for you, what's a moment you feel comfortable sharing? Yeah, this was a moment where I felt just really deeply humbled. That's where we started today's service.
Oh, thank you for that, Chuck. I grew up very conservative. I think we had a great childhood, very strong family in the new church, and so I came to Brenathan and to this place with a lot of ideals, a lot of hope, and certainly wanted a good relationship and happy marriage and, just live a good life. Things didn't turn out that way. I ended up getting a divorce. I don't recommend that. It was one of those things that came out of nowhere. And my response to that was to start drinking. And I drank alcoholically, and so I'm fond of saying, God loved me so much He allowed me to become an alcoholic. And that drinking took me to dark places. I firmly believe that the booze is it's a solvent. It dissolves marriages and bank accounts and moral character, and certainly did that for me. I found myself in a place of brokenness and very, very humiliated. Did not see a way out, and finally came to a place where I knew that my solutions were no longer working. I couldn't do this anymore, and very angry at God. Why would He allow me to go through the process of a divorce? I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And my reactions to it were, in truth, very, very, on one hand you could say stupid, but destructive. I responded to this. I needed all the propping up I could possibly get. I'm grateful to a number of people that were able to reach out to me, and I finally found a group of folk where I was able to receive and to hear the help that I actually needed. Instead of thinking that I know everything, and being willing to be led, to be teachable, and to find that place of willing to do some things, take some steps that maybe I didn't believe in, but ended up getting results I cannot deny. And for me, that was, it's been a game changer. So I know that today I've been given an opportunity. I've been given a second chance at a first-class life. And that's the reality of where I am today. And I don't think moving from that place of just surviving. I like this acronym PAID, P-A-I-D. It's pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, that place of absolute brokenness. And from moving from that to thrival, it's one thing being in survival mode where you're just doing what you can do just to get by, and then coming to this place of not only is it going to be okay, but it's going to be good.
Yeah.
So that's taken a bunch, but I don't know about you, but have you ever in your life actually learned at the end of someone else's finger? Have you ever learned anything that stood you in good stead? That was not my experience. What happened with me is in that place of brokenness, someone said, I really see you going through.
Yeah.
You're going through the ringer. You're going through some really hard times, and if you're willing, would you just listen to me share my story? And that's what they did. They told me what they had gone through. They weren't telling me what to do or how to do it. What they did is say, here's what happened to me. And it sounds like you're in a similar situation. Here's what I did. Here's some of my responses to this, both good and bad. And if I was going to do it again, maybe here's how I would do it. And they just shared their beautiful experience, strength, and hope with me. And it gave me hope. And I think in that moment, I was absolutely in need of propped up. I mean, without your beautiful example, without those stilts, that thing falls over. And I was headed down a bad path. And people were there for me, really, really supportive, lifting me up by first propping me up to allow me to get enough on my own feet that I was able to start traveling down this journey. So for me, being really willing to look at who and what I am. And I think that is a massive thing. My eyes go out. I see you and your faults.
Yeah.
what my eyes don't do so well is come back and look at self. And what this process has allowed me to do is take a good and honest look at who and what I am. So one of the most useful definitions of humility for me, that works the best for me, is this idea of humility is a sincere attempt to look at who and what I am, followed by a desire to become what I can be. And truthfully, looking at self is tough. I mean, no one wants to look at character defects and flaws and see the weaknesses, and I certainly didn't. No one jumps up and down to go through temptations and struggles and to this process of self-examination. But to recognize, I'm an imperfect human being. I'm a child of God. He created me imperfect, and for me to expect to be perfect is sort of ridiculous. Yeah. So really being honest and taking that inward look and say, what are you doing? What have you done? Where do you need to go and take corrective measures to set some wrongs right? And I've had a bunch of those. I do not, I don't go skipping down the street looking to make amends with people that I've harmed, but the immense value in doing that, to say, not just I'm sorry. Anyone can say out loud that they're sorry for their past mistakes, or either words that we've spoken, emails that we've sent, or things that we've done. But to actually be sorry, and it's to land at that place of beyond just the apology, to say, I've hurt you in these ways. I really am sorry for my actions. What can I do to make that right? Is there anything I can do to make that right? And sometimes they say, well, we never want to see you again. And then you gotta look at that. Yeah. Okay, that's what they want. That's what I need to do. And in other cases, it's just keep trying to be the guy that you're becoming. Yeah. And everything in between. Like most people, I think as human beings, we hurt those that are closest to us. Yeah. Those that are nearest and dearest are the ones that we hurt the most. And those are important relationships, and they warrant and deserve the time to heal them. And certainly my drinking got to a place where I was hurting people I loved and cared about, and I absolutely do not want to do that. Not just family, but good friends. I mean, it's part of life, that we come to this place of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Yeah. God, I'm broken. I need all the help I can. And are you going to figure out a way to make that happen? Yeah. And somehow God does. I love the fact that God does not shoot the wounded. Yeah. there is a way up and out, and a process.
Well, Mark, that's beautifully said. And I think about, as you were saying that, again, I think of the biblical story we're looking at, and sort of the metaphor of Paul falling off his horse, like literally just blind and then in jail and all these things. And if you could offer us in brief, there's a couple of things. One is, I want to back up just a quick second. So in two sentences, could you tell us somebody who you felt really saw you and what their gift was to you in that moment? Because again, I want to come back to, that's what you'd mentioned. Like, people saw you, and it made a big difference.
I got to say, it began with my dad. For whatever reason, on the day, I didn't plan on not drinking that day, but I drank. I was a daily drinker, and it was not good. But that day, for some reason, I didn't drink that morning, and I was with my dad. We were doing a little wiring job, and we'd pulled all the wires the day before, and so these wires are sticking out of the outlets, or the little can pot lights up high, and fairly easy day, easy job. Just take off some shielding off the copper wire, plug it in the right hole, tighten up a screw, and it was not difficult work. And it's February, and I'm sweating. I hadn't had anything to drink. My body was craving the booze, and I started shaking, and I couldn't get the copper wire into the hole. And my dad is in the periphery vision. I mean, I can see him standing there, and I'm like 39 years old, but like a little kid, I got to once again explain to Dad why it is that, I'm not following the path, I'm off the beam, I'm doing something I shouldn't. And so to explain myself, I'm lying down on the ground trying to get this stupid electrical wiring done, and I look up at my dad, and he's just looking at me. He's not saying a word. And I said to him, "I'm sick." And his response was, "I know." And, as weird as that sounds, that was a game changer. I went home and, I don't recommend this to anyone, but I spent 3 days at home detoxing, and knowing what I now know about alcoholism and recovery, I could have gone into alcoholic seizure, and it didn't happen. It was not my experience, but I should have been under the medical supervision for detoxification of booze. So that was one. I mean, I remember finally waking up and looking outside. I'd gone to sleep in daylight, and it was dark outside, and I just got goosebumps because I suddenly realized I'd just gone a whole day without drinking.
Oh, wow.
And that was the start of something. I went 2 years, and then I think the next was definitely my sister. She was involved with some recovery stuff and doing great. Life had unaccountably transformed, and I was 2 years not drinking, and she directed me to some help. She said, "Mark, please just go and listen to some of these folk who may be able to help you." And I got the gift of willingness, man. Who listens to their younger sister? I didn't, but I did that day. And,
beautiful.
She said to me, "Go," and I went.
That's beautiful, Mark. Thank you. Those are great stories. Because it just is this reminder, right, that we're all part of the path, and those little bits of really being seen by someone, being seen when we're sick, seeing how wellness can happen, so important. Last question I have for you again, and just thinking of this sort of as if you were to offer in brief, or I really do believe God speaks to us in the horizons he puts in front of us, right? And with any church service, the people who probably are most struggling at the moment, it might be an addiction, it might be a loss, a health issue, it might be a career thing, it might be a marriage that's breaking up, it might be any number of things. And here's this beautiful part where God's just never going to leave us. God's just never, he's never going to leave us, despite the appearance, right? He's never going to leave us. And there's this horizon piece where this new self evolves. And I know for me, the new self is sort of the superhero self that I believe, which is not true, right? That there'll be this superhero self that's able to conquer all these demons. But reality is it's a different thing. It's a different kind of self, that's at the other side of all this. And if you were to offer, briefly in terms of, this is the over the horizon thing to know about the new self that God is giving you. You may not understand it at this moment, but there's this new self that God is working on that's coming to life, and you may not see it today, tomorrow, this year, 5 years, who knows, but you will see it. How would you phrase that?
That's a big one. I think the first thing I would say, don't discount the terrible things that have happened to you and the mistakes that you've made. I know that in modern day society, there's this huge effort to push everything under the rug and to hide who and what we really are and all our faults and foibles and all that good stuff. But my sense is that God really does seem to find a way when there seems to be no way. And the terrible things and the tragedies and the mistakes that we've made are so much a part of the building block of who and what we are. We're never going to be perfect. I love the translation that says, none is perfect but one, and that's God. This idea that we're going to somehow become perfect, I think, is problematic. There's one sentence of scripture that's translated, "Be thou perfect, even as thy Father in heaven is perfect." And unfortunately, it's not a good translation.
No.
Be in the way of becoming perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. I am grateful for all the struggles and the challenges that I have today. I was not at the time. I was very angry at God over these things. I had a lot of blame for God, and all this, why me? And I remember an individual one time saying, well, why not you? Why are you exempt? Why should you be exempt? And going through the challenging and difficult things allows us to come out on the other side with a degree of compassion and empathy that I am not sure I would, for one, would have been able to have or offer had I not gone through these things. So in many ways, I think I've become a better father. Because I'm not recommending any of this, but my negative experiences allowed me to be a lot more compassionate with my kids. Definitely a lot more sympathetic and understanding of other people with their challenges and difficulties, and rather than coming from a place of condemnation and judgment, which I never really felt from the Lord. I felt it from people sometimes, but not from the Lord. He said, my sense is that God more often is sitting on the corner saying, Mark, I see you going through some really tough times right now. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. You don't have to do this alone. And I'm providing people who will be there to help and support you. So don't discount or hide the negative things that you've done or even think and sometimes feel. Recognize them for what they are. These terrible things are not us. I really do believe they come and are from the hells or the states of negativity. But God uses us in profound ways. I think as a result of these experiences, I have been able to be there for other people. So first as a prop up and then as a lift up for other people in their struggles. I've been able to go to the federal prison and talk to guys there. I've never been to prison myself. So how can someone who's never been to prison go and talk to prisoners? And I start talking about the experiences that I was going through and the thought process that I had as a result of that, and my feelings that were brought up as a result of those experiences, and the identification begins. And people can appreciate and get from their own experiences where you're at. And the truth of the matter is, no one wants that ideal perfect person in their life. That 1% absolute perfect Facebook profile that says, look how great I am and look at everything magical going on in my life. I think we as human beings have a greater sense of connection when we recognize our humanness, that we're all children of God just trying to become the best version of our internal self that we can possibly be with all our warts and all.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, Mark, thank you. Mark, thank you. That's beautiful. So what we're going to do now, friends, and again, Mark, thank you so much for that, is we're going to close today's service with a prayer. And actually, Mark's going to lead us. And for those of you who haven't joined us before, joining us online for the first time, Mark will do an extemporaneous prayer, and then we do the Our Father prayer. Then you have a little moment for some quiet reflection as we go into the last song. So Mark, want to join me center stage? So again, I do want to say thank you to Mark. If we give him a round of applause, friends, it was just great there. And thank you so much for what you offer. And you lead us in prayer, please.
Okay, just take a moment to get centered, to think about where you are in your life and maybe where you would aim to be, finding a closer and deeper connection with those that are important to you, your connection and love, your connection to the Lord. Lord, thank you for my life. Thank you for this incredibly beautiful and precious gift. Thank you for all the things that happen, the good and the bad. Thank you for the incredible men and women who have come to first prop up and then lift up. For the many angels that constantly surround us. Thank you, Lord, for the reminder that no matter what our present circumstances, there is a way up and out. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me from the bondage of self, that I may better serve thee. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Amen. Please join with me in the prayer that the Lord gave us when he said, Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread. Give us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. O Lord, forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Amen.
Friends, have a great week.
Where the rain finds its way through the stormy cloud, down through the ground to the tiniest seed. You came to me in a stormy hour. Your love found a home deep inside of me. The rain is working very hard. It's got to water every little seed. It's beautifully ordinary, making life seem very good indeed.
I wish that I could lay around all day with you. Listen to the rain pounding on the roof. But I'm in Oklahoma, only halfway home. Driving though I barely even see the road.
The rain is working very hard. It's got to water every little seed. It's beautifully ordinary, making life seem very good indeed. Ooh, 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 oh, oh, oh. Well, the rain keeps coming down, but it don't bother me. In fact, it brings me back my favorite memory. You're laughing in the rain, your clothes are soaking wet, standing neath the branches waiting for a kiss. The rain is working very hard. It's got to water every little seed. It's beautifully ordinary. Life with you seems very good indeed. You're beautiful and ordinary. Life with you is very good indeed. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Well, the rain Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. The rain is falling down. It don't bother me. The rain keeps falling.